Just checking the audio online. Thank you.
I can hear you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to ask everybody to come into the room. We're going to be starting the meeting in about 30 seconds. Oh, look. There's the information I was looking for. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our special committee of the whole for February 9th, 2026. As we call the meeting to order, we'd just like to acknowledge that we conduct our business on the traditional territories of the Coast of the Strait Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize Lekwungen people known today as the Songhees and Kasapsan or Esquimalt nations and how their connections to these lands and adjoining waters continue to this day. I don't have mayor's remarks. I will have some in the council meeting to follow. So we'll move straight to the corporate reporting documents. This is subject to public input, so if any members of the public wish to speak to it, our process here is we will go through the presentation, take questions from council. At the conclusion of questions from council, we will give the opportunity for the public to speak. Following public input, we will then turn back to the council table to give any direction. This is a committee of the whole, so we don't make decisions. We are just here to give a little bit more of an informal discussion around the item at hand. And with that, I am very pleased to hand this over to Rihanna LaChance, our Director of Finance and Asset Management. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. It is my pleasure to be here this evening to introduce the Infrastructure Prioritization and Investment Forecast Report. I'm joined here this evening by my colleagues leading asset management in the district in the divisions of Engineering and Public Works, Parks and Recreation, and Facilities Management. This team has come together in a meaningful way to prepare this work for Council. I'd like to thank them for their contribution. It's resulted in some excellent forward-thinking work here. Also joining me are our consultants on this work, who have also been our fearless leaders as we've endeavored to get this work completed. It's Erin Lee, just to my left, and then just a little bit further is Laura Bernier. The report before you provides an asset management project update and overview of the work completed. Attached, you'll find the asset management roadmap and the capital prioritization framework, including the 20-year spend plans by service category. The last attachment is a long-term investment forecast. I'll provide a brief introduction before passing to Urban Systems for their presentation. The intent is to keep our introductions brief, allowing Council time to ask questions and discuss the matter at hand. As my introductory comments, this work has been designed and completed as the next step in the district's asset management strategy and roadmap. Guided by the Council Priority Projects number 25 and 38, this is seen as preparatory work to develop the comprehensive asset management plan and long-term financial plan, and also builds nicely off the Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Plan completed in 2021. The exercise from a staff perspective aligns with best practices and long-term planning, where all available data is accumulated and evaluated against a given set of standardized criteria, including criteria such as limited capacity, including limited data regarding underground works, limited road disruption in any given year, limited financial capacity, among others. From this work, staff now have identifiable data gaps to address, where deferred programs like drainage require immediate further attention, where there are financial constraints identified and need to be reported to Council, like in the case of borrowing for building requirements, building replacements, my apologies, where there are major projects that Council needs advance warning or opportunity to advocate on, in the case of Phase 2 upland sewer separation, and we now have long-term reserve and debt forecast models built out. Before passing over to Urban, I'd like to spend a moment on the long-term investment forecast, in just a moment. I'll keep it brief. Building off the work that Urban led, we've developed a long-term investment forecast. It's designed to present a council-centered view of the capital spend and layer on related impacts of financing. Attachment 3 to the report provides a table and 2 accompanying graphs. On page 2, as exactly shown in your handout in front of you, as well as in the appendix, is the investment forecast. It provides council with the forecasted spend and funding requirements. The table is broken down into 3 sections. First, major projects requiring further attention, those projects that place the most pressure on financial capacity and are of great importance in the community. 2, below that, the core infrastructure is listed as a capital spend and has been subjected to the prioritization framework we're presenting this evening. And at the bottom, you'll find the balancing of available funding with the funding shortfall identified as debt. That can be characterized for council as the forecasted debt. The accompanying graphs provide further insight into the financial implications, but are only here for planning purposes. They are extremely sensitive to reprioritization of any capital spend, as shown in the accompanying table. This is not intended to be a refined long-term plan. That is our future that we're working towards. Rather, provide an order of magnitude based on the projected capital spend we know today. This is only a first step. The reason we are reporting all of this now to council is to share with council what has been developed so far and and we feel our work has reached an endpoint to get council's direction. Council can receive and staff will keep refining, or council can interact and provide changes as they see fit. We hope this will be a valuable opportunity for council to connect with staff on those longer term plans under development, and also for staff to find out if this is what council is looking for or if there's anything we're missing. With my introductory comments now complete, I'd like to pass it over to Urban, who will help us understand how to address the prioritization framework and capital spend levels, if amenable.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lachance, welcome. Middle button not working. We may have to turn the power button on the back. All right, try it now. There.
Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. I have no doubt I could likely project without it, but probably much better this way. Thank you very much, Rihanna.
I think you'd have a hard time reaching all the people at home.
Yes, that's true. So we wanted to just kick things off and start the conversation with some very high-level notes on the capital planning prioritization framework as a whole, and pay homage to a lot of the work, the great work that's been done over the years by staff through that process. We'll keep a lot of the remarks quite high-level. We trust that there's a lot of information in this package that's been reviewed, and so if there is a desire to dig into any specific details, we're happy to come back to that and dive into any of the numbers or charts or specific slides. So just starting to build some of that context, in 2016 there was the OPUS report, and a lot of work has been done since that time by staff to improve information and data, for instance, improve different processes and practices that lead towards asset management. There was also the Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Forecast that gave a good sense of what the long-term priorities were over the next 50 years for asset management. Today's initiative really is about checking in on those things, creating a clear, replicable way to do capital planning on shorter term time horizons that align with some of the long-term time horizons, and bring council along the ride for that and bring alignment to that capital planning framework that's being piloted through this annual process. So a couple of things in addition to note, something that'll become clear, as Rihanna mentioned earlier, is that commitment towards asset management and that levy, and that's kind of a through line here, and just commending council for having instituted that and keeping with that, and ensuring that infrastructure is maintained in the future as a result of those good works and finances that are in place. So I'm sure Mayor and Council are quite familiar with the asset management process. The kind of AMBC wheel has been seen in many different documents that have circulated. The way that we design the capital planning framework is aligned with this, notion of assessing, planning, and then going out and implementing a lot of these processes, and doing so concurrently as well. It's not it's not a step-by-step necessarily, but many of these things are ongoing in parallel, essentially. With that, a lot of the processes here are focused on building those data and information so that good decisions can be made in the long run. And that is a process that takes year after year a commitment towards building up those initiatives, and decision-making becomes clearer as a result of that building of information. And that's going to support the ability to make more strategic decisions about different asset classes like drainage, as some of those risks or levels of service concerns become a little bit clearer. There's an opportunity to make kind of calculated strategic decisions about those service areas. So we wanted to, at a very high level, create a bit of a refresh on the Sustainable Infrastructure Replacement Program, which was conducted a number of years ago and created that long-term forecast over 50 years, which was able to inform some of the levies that you guys have, already started putting away. If there are any questions about this, happy to, dive into this a little bit further. This is really about supporting some additional guidance to check in on some of those longer-term priorities, and as I mentioned there, just doing that good work of building those daily decisions and kind of annual decisions that are going to add up to a solid, successful 50-year time horizon in the long run. So in a nutshell here, the capital plan development process is kind of summarized in this graph, and invite others to weigh in on this as well. But we wanted to identify the kind of assessment phase, which is all about updating information systems, gathering that information to make good decisions. And then there is this kind of ongoing process that is revisited and iterated to align, prioritize, and then balance decisions about those infrastructure priorities that are occurring. And so, that comes along with creating some of the initial annual funding that you're going to align with those long-term financial plans, and then prioritize some of those governance decisions or infrastructure investments by governance focus area that you're looking for, and kind of iterate and pilot an annual capital planning framework. That allows kind of 5-year capital planning to occur, as well as longer capital planning. Ideally, this will also lead to the visualization of some real outcomes associated to infrastructure and planning as well, where these initiatives and infrastructure that have been completed are able to be dashboarded and create visual maps of that progress and those outcomes. So that's really a key outcome and result that can be measurable in terms of how these capital plans are aligning towards successful longer-term plans. So these are a few guiding principles. We won't get into them too much. A lot of these are, very familiar with folks who own and manage their own assets, like their houses and their cars. Largely thinking about risk and reliability. What's the condition of your assets and the timing of those? What are the benefits to the community? So these were all guiding principles that helped us align what those, prioritization targets were going to look like, in questions that are kind of to be posed as we're doing this type of work. Again, this really comes down to the methodology that we've used to draft some of these initial and proposed hypothesized priorities with staff. And we wanted to show some of the methodology. We won't dig into things too deeply here. Really, it's about urgency, risk, and when these priorities should be emerging in relation to each other. This is where I think things start to get pretty interesting here, and there's an opportunity to continue to build and improve some of these processes and practices where there are real targeted focus areas and governance areas that are intended to be, balanced in order to meet community needs. So you'll see here a few of those kind of proposed focus areas that are aligned with Council's strategic planning priorities as well, really looking at reliable core infrastructure delivery, climate-ready systems, safe and accessible mobility. These are all just examples of a lot of the balancing priorities that Council faces when looking at this large suite of infrastructure projects that are in front of us in terms of what we need to manage. So through this process, a few key areas that we see as important to get Council's feedback and weighing in on is some of that infrastructure and services leadership. So, setting clear priorities, governance and accountability, vision and results. So this does map against a lot of some of those earlier outcomes that we're seeking to align this process with from a capital planning perspective to ensure that we're aligned in terms of the goals we're trying to achieve, balancing those priorities in an interdisciplinary and collaborative way, and then getting to some of those outcomes that are really more visually focused and reportable. So with that, that's quite a high-level view of some of the capital planning frameworks that we're hoping to align with. Happy to come back to any of that. We did want to show some of the methodology and inputs that were used in terms of creating that financial forecast, which has been taken and adapted by staff to support even further granularity and bring that into the district's municipal priorities and framing here. So you'll see that this is a 20-year spending forecast of all of the assets. This was done building on master plans, the DCC process that was done last year, as well as staff input and knowledge and other technical studies that were part of this to ensure that we were capturing as much data and information possible on the infrastructure that's at play today, and that's metaphorically coming down the pipe in terms of things that are important priorities to be addressing. So you'll see here, we did highlight that there's a drainage master plan results there that are showing some need for prioritization, and this is a normal process that we would expect to balance some of the priorities and either distinguish where spending needs to happen immediately versus where things can be deferred in the future as well. And you'll find there that there's some notes on ongoing improvements as well as some capital management needs that are highlighted on the next page that really show some of the areas of improvement that can be acted on in the next capital improvement process and areas that staff have been working towards to build some of that information. So I believe this is coming towards kind of our latter slides here. I think as a key area of focus, we wanted to highlight some of the differences between a typical versus special projects type approach, where there's a need to balance some of those priorities, where there's the delivery of major important governance projects that we need to create some space for, as well as some of the utilities that staff are working on continually updating information about risk and condition and things like that, and continuously making decisions on, day to day, essentially. I think what we see here, it really does support the need for continuing to maintain that 2% asset management levy. There is a number of infrastructure projects, whether they're utility and underground projects that are less seen or kind of above ground, larger governance projects. Those are all things that are kind of supported through that 2% levy, in order to achieve kind of all of the projects on the suite there, on the spectrum. You would kind of want to maintain that 2% infrastructure levy as well as capitalize on debt servicing, grant opportunities, and other opportunities there. And here's just some further notes, but really there's the most significant portion in that 6 to 10 year range, and that's where some of those focus areas happen. Some of those pressures could be moderated through prioritization, and that's where getting alignment and understanding council's feedback here becomes ever more important. We did have one other slide on, oh. Oh, sorry, I was speaking to the slide that wasn't there, sorry. Yeah, so here we just have, last but not least, the buildings forecast. This shows the significant governance projects, really. It highlights and removes a lot of those underground utility projects and demonstrate where there is a focus on certain types of larger pieces of infrastructure for consideration. This is primarily buildings. I believe there's one park with Carnarvon that's also in here as well, but these are a lot of the more significant projects here for consideration. There are, after this, a number of slides that go by service area, but I think we'll kind of end our presentation here and just open things up for a conversation, and happy to dig into any of those if there are questions.
Yeah, appreciate that. Just cognizant of time, and you timed it very well. I was sort of hoping that we would get to questions by 6:20 so that we had time to walk through, give everybody a chance to ask questions and make comments. Can I just maybe to Ms. LaChance, just for our clarification, we're here today really to kind of just have a conversation and perhaps to give some feedback. Is that correct, in terms of sort of how we where do we see some key areas that need to have prioritization? What information do we need to give the governance decisions going forward? What is it you'd like us to comment on over the next half hour or so?
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship, for the opportunity to set the tone as we head into the question period. What we were really hoping for is to provide an early look at our approach to long-term planning, provide some of the outputs that are possible, and get that feedback from Mayor and Council in terms of if they're seeing the types of planning, types of outputs that they would expect and would hope that we refine when we deliver the comprehensive asset management plan and long-term financial plan.
Great.
And then I would also suggest that perhaps if there's anything missing, that Council would also comment on that.
Perfect, thank you. So questions from members of Council? I probably appreciate it's Committee of the Whole, and we're not going to give direction, so comments are probably also in order, but just to maintain our process with public input, I'd like to get questions. Then I'll see any public input, and then I'll come back to this table and we can make any final comments that we wish to have around the table. There may not be any questions, but I assume there probably are at least a few. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, and then Smart.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and through you, I have some that are probably for staff and some that are for the consultants here with us. I do appreciate where we are finally getting to in this. It seems like it has been quite a while coming. But I guess a couple of questions that I have. We continuously say that the council is responsible for defining the levels of service. Question that I get asked quite a bit, and I find it a little difficult to answer here, is that we will say we wish to continue with the level of service that we have, but many people will say, well, I don't want to continue with the level of service I have because my road is really bad, or the drainage system is really bad. And so how do we rationalize the starting point we're at, meeting where it needs to be versus enhanced improvement to get where we want to go and speak to it reasonably?
I'm sure who to give that one to, but Ms. LaChance, I'll give it to you and you can hand it over to the consultant if you wish.
Yes, thank you very much. Through you, Your Worship, I would love to comment, and I do would like to invite my colleagues to jump in. I think there's sort of a technical textbook way at it, and then I think there's going to be the Oak Bay way of us advancing that work. We are very mindful in the asset management work that we need answers quickly, and so we need to be able to establish that conversation with Council in I'll call it a right-sized way. I really appreciate the connection Councillor Patterson's made to baselines, and that the existing baseline is where we would begin. And there are different approaches to developing levels of service, both internally and then having sort of the council view. But ultimately, it always involves that review to fully unpack what the current state is. And so that would become our baseline, essentially, at a point in time. And then we would be reporting and monitoring and executing investments against that baseline. And then I'll look to my colleagues for the more, to round that out. And then it looks like Michelle would like to, Ms. Hunt would like to jump in.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Councillor Patterson, I think one of the ways that you hear about services levels from residents is through the community survey, through the citizen survey. And I know that, we took a look at that, right? And the last one said things like, water, sewer, and storm drain systems, are 91% of people said that those are very important or somewhat important. Others said that, they were dissatisfied with, road pavement maintenance, 45% dissatisfied, road lines and marking 31%. So, those types of statistics and that type of feedback that we get through that survey can help inform council in terms of where those investments and staff bring forward how those investments could be changed to improve service levels, because that's really what people are talking about when they provide feedback in that level.
Thank you. I wonder who the 9% are that don't use toilets or drink water or have rainfall in their house that has to be gotten rid of. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you. And just for clarification purposes on this, the model that is used here to generate this information is all net present value. It doesn't take into consideration inflationary and just confirming that.
Please go ahead.
Yes, that's correct.
And further clarification along that line, that we do not use new development taxation to reduce the tax burden for current taxpayers.
Ms. LaChante's question.
Yes, thank you. The long-term forecast in front of you ultimately provides a very high-level relationship back to taxation. The reserve levels have incorporated reserve development charges, so some element of growth funding, but there has been no modeling with forecasted non-market change offsets. Our recommendation, of course, would be consistent with our financial management policy, which is the non-market change should be kept to fund future services.
Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that answer. I thought that was right, but good to confirm it. The numbers are quite large here. I was wondering if Ms. LaChance could perhaps comment on the district's ability to earn investment returns on any infrastructure reserves, although maybe we won't have much in the way of infrastructure reserves, but just if our Director of Finance could comment on that.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, I really appreciate the question, particularly with the first year, last year being my first budget with the district. I had identified and spoke about the theme of a period of investment for the district and how meaningful financial management strategies are going to be as we govern or navigate that through the coming years. With that, Council did approve an enhanced service level around Treasury. So we anticipate a more active portfolio within, even with reserves. The levy has been building and having reserves on hand. So we anticipate a more active investment portfolio management, which will return higher returns. That will, of course, be dependent on the market rate available to us. Just a last note that, we have to take very prudent investments. We are required by legislation. I think that just being more active in investments is going to support future service delivery sustainability.
Councillor Patterson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that information. Next question I have actually might be for our Director of Engineering, who has joined us here too. Have we in any way in this presentation evaluated impact of climate change to the district's infrastructure or even to private property?
Mr. Rennick, and for those watching online, Mr. Rennick is our Director of Engineering and Public Works. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for the question, Councillor Patterson. The primary way that the impacts of climate change are felt is in the storm drainage infrastructure. Generally, it means that the pipes have to be replaced with larger pipes, and those cost increases they're kind of nominal. They are baked into the drainage master plan, but ultimately Whether you're replacing a pipe with the same size or whether you're going one size larger does not have a significant impact on the cost of replacing that pipe as an overall percentage of the project cost.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. The next thing I just want to talk about, because we did touch on, or the consultants, Ms. Bernier, did I get that right? Thank you. Touched upon the sustainable infrastructure replacement plan that we already do have. There were also state of infrastructure reports that were done through the engineering department at the time. And I think that in some ways we do not garner enough credit for all of this work done by staff. There's a couple of reasons, and it's because the reports are all disjointed and they all use different rating systems. And I'm just would like to understand if there is a way that we can bring these together more comprehensively, because it has been an enormous body of work that has been accomplished to get us to this stage. And I think sometimes some of these reports get lost, they get funneled down, and they just get buried, and we don't have a way of bringing them together. So I'm wondering if there are other models that would allow us to do that as we move forward.
Not sure. Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Sure, through your worship. I'll give this a try, and if you're comfortable, maybe Ms. Bernier can back me up. Thanks for the question. I would say that the local government language around asset management has advanced significantly since 2016. There aren't exactly one type of measure that everybody sticks to, but that assess, plan, and implement wheel and Asset Management BC's work is becoming a lot more common broadly. So it's not as surprising in looking back from today that 2016 looks a bit different than 2026. Kind of surprising to say that year out loud, but here we are. It did take quite a bit of time for even local governments broadly in BC to start kind of converging towards this is how we're going to talk about it. So I think your question around the industry is a great one. What we like about this process over the last 3/4 of a year has been working with staff to build the language up so that it's as much of anything, Oak Bay staff, this government's language around asset management. So we feel quite confident that this sticks better than even past ones. There's always, as we talk about it, some risk where somebody does reporting and analysis for you and then drops it off in hopes that it starts to stick. This is different. When you start to collaborate and actually work through all the programs and the projects together more collaboratively, it actually begins to be less what any one of the two of us say, and so much more about how staff are beginning to speak about it. So there is room for even more rating consolidation to say this is exactly how we're going to talk about it. But I think the confidence that comes from this reporting has a lot to do with so much of this is staff and team led by business unit and business unit up. So we're feeling good about where it's at today.
Thank you. I'm going to go to other questions just around the table, just so we can make sure we have chance. Oh, you have one more? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Just the Public Sector Accounting Board classification rating really is based on sustainability, flexibility, and vulnerability. And I get the sustainability and I can translate it into this, but the flexibility and the vulnerability are not quite as apparent to me.
Ms. Lee, do you want to comment? It wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Actually, would you mind, through your worship, is the question to try to figure out how flexibility and vulnerability could be better represented in some of the work?
Well, and how it will help inform council's decision out of the numbers that are before us.
Oh, boy.
Can be applied.
That's a sticky question. Maybe on the first one I'd like to just offer around vulnerability is how it has been or is being currently applied. So maybe it's not the subject heading in each of the reports, as Director Rennick was describing. Climate change has been infiltrated or applied in every single one of the master plans that has been developed so far. So vulnerability, sustainability, and the ability to anticipate risks that maybe don't look like the past, but we're trying to get prepared for. That's very much guiding all the inputs that come into this report in the first place. So that I think on vulnerability, it's probably advanced more than any one of us might have thought, looking forward 5 years ago. The second part about flexibility, and it's not maybe the direction you were going with the question because I really like it, but the capital and the prioritization framework encourages staff to bring their judgment to bear. And I think within judgment and flexibility, there's a lot of weighing lots of factors. So Ms. Bernier talked about principles, then focus areas, which consider a whole bunch of ranges of priorities that make up this council and this community. So the flexibility to be an engineer or director of engineering or a director of Parks and Rec, but then see the priorities of the community and say, this is my discipline training, but this is what's local and contextual here. That's almost an example of us being flexible to what the needs of the specific community are. So I think just the quick answer there is flexibility and vulnerability are inherent in the body of the work and the prioritization framework, even if they aren't the section headings to date.
Thank you. I have Councillor Smart, then Appleton, then Green on my speaking list. And Watson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I think most of these questions, there's just 3 of them are from Ms. LaChance. My first question is the recommendation in the report to maintain the 2% tax levy further than previously discussed is obviously a significant governance decision. I wanted to clarify, I don't believe the receipt of this report tonight is fully supporting the assumption that we're continuing this tax levy. It sounded to me from description from staff that the breadth of that decision and options would be coming forward in the future. I just wanted to clarify.
Ms. LaChance, please confirm.
Yes, absolutely. That decision will be coming back to council. We are within the 4th year, the 6th year of the 8 years of levy increases. We've included that within the draft budget and we'll be coming back on that. I think the earlier reference that we heard this evening is when you lay out the funding against the reprioritized capital plans, it's evident that there will be a need for that levy. But of course, that decision and the recommendation tonight does not confront that for council.
Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. Another question I had was just in looking over the different provided charts for the different scopes. I noticed that some of the our 2024 annual funding levels are higher than the annual sustainable funding targets. And I'm wondering if year over year, will these be eventually lowered to their sustainable funding target levels after projects are completed, or have these targets already changed? And are those 2024 levels reflecting that we're already at a higher target level? Thank you.
Ms. LaChance? Oh.
Okay.
Ms. Bernier?
Thank you, through your worship. A couple of things here. The 2021 plan certainly, I think with many asset management plans and many funding strategies, is a snapshot in time and quickly, as soon as is written, is rapidly put out of date through inflation. I think, post 2020, we saw massive amounts of inflation. The infrastructure inventory grows as you're adding new infrastructure as well. So there's a number of factors that would increase that as well. I think, making sure that the asset management plan or sustainable infrastructure replacement plan is kept up to date is a great way of ensuring that that target is met. However, it's also worth noting it really is a sustainable life cycle of an asset, and so it's a very, very long-term projection. And these 2024 annual funding are a little bit more nimble and serve shorter-term time horizons than the 50-year projection that was in the sustainable infrastructure replacement plan when we were incorporating that data into our work.
Please go ahead. Go ahead, Ms. LaChance.
Oh, thank you. Through your worship, just to add on, absolutely perfect response from my perspective as well. But I just wanted to add on that as asset management maturity evolves for the district, we have a better look at breaking down assets into systems and categories, and gives us a different view in terms of allocating out that funding profile that's available to reserves, available through borrowing. And so I think just circling back to the original comment that the sort of initial sustainable investment replacement plan forecasts really were just at that time forecast from a total basis, and now we're sort of getting more granular, and so you'll see these, but we'll refine them over time. And then I would just reiterate that it is very much life cycle. Sometimes that replacement that we're saving for is just outside of view. And so it's very important, I think also to an earlier comment from Ms. Bernier, is that we're looking for the 50-year plan, we're looking for the 20 that's more nimble, and then of course we do our 5-year and make our final decisions. And so there, that sort of planning realm is all important, and we have to balance our efforts across all of those. But we want them to relate to each other. I hope that helps.
Councillor Smart?
Thank you. My last question was just with regards to public amenity infrastructure, such as stairs, handrails, boat launches, street furniture, et cetera. Can you just clarify that they're included in this asset management plan or specifically not? Thank you.
Sure, go to Ms. LaChance.
Yes, so I would suggest, hopefully in the report, it does stick out. I really tried to make sure that we had put a clear disclaimer for council to understand that this work was really focusing in on major assets. There is sort of minor equipment or minor capital replacements that are routinely scheduled into our capital plan every 5-year cycle. And those assets that you're referring to are likely life cycled into the 5-year financial plan right now.
Thank you. Moving now to Councillor Appleton, then I have Councillor Green and Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to staff. I appreciate you joining us, and thank you so much for the information you provided. One of the questions I had, I think, is primarily for our own staff, and one of the, obviously, to guide the assumptions and the costing for the projections that are included in such a report. Analysis of existing condition and cataloging of existing condition is critical, and we've done a lot of work on this to this effect over the last number of years that I've been on council. That said, during the OCP debate process, it was raised at a couple of different junctures that it was difficult to comprehensively plan for some aspects of density proposed in the OCP because some pieces of information were not comprehensive as far as our infrastructure or infrastructure capacity analysis. So I guess my question is, what is contemplated into this report as far as additional analysis pieces and assessment pieces to be able to, I guess, tighten and refine the projections that are included here?
Sure. Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, I'll definitely provide a response for the work that we've completed here. This work incorporated the original DCC ACC program work where we anticipated a modest growth rate that we originally knew at the time. And so growth rates have not been revised as part of this material. I believe Councillor Appleton's referring to recent evolutions of the OCP and anticipated pre-zoning policy work and capacity assessments that's underway. That potentially would be changing that growth rate. We would look to revise these long-term plans as known new growth assumptions would become available. We would do it not all the time. It would be on a regular interval that council could expect to see new information from us. Just looking to my...
That's good. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to clarify, and I appreciate that the infrastructure need will vary based on growth rates, and I think that's certainly the case, and I appreciate that. More what I was asking in this particular case, are there hard costs and actual work still to be undertaken to do physical analysis of assets in order to guide the costing that's outlined here? I know that there's been separate analyses for stormwater and sanitary sewer infrastructure. What is the progress of that analysis?
Mr. Rennick.
Thank you very much. Through the mayor. That further analysis work is very much underway. It's really just being kicked off right now. Ultimately, because redoing the models is quite significant, we felt it was prudent to wait until the OCP had been adopted. I think that ideally in a long-term scenario where a government was regularly updating their OCP on a schedule, you could almost sort of plan that out of, okay, this is the schedule that the OCP is updated, and now this is the schedule that the master plans will be refreshed when you have those changed land use scenarios from your updated OCP.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Appleton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just really quickly, with respect to major building projects that are laid out in the long-term infrastructure investment forecast, I note that the Monterey and Library building is not included on that list, although I see that Monterey is sort of included probably for some short-term immediate investment costs in 2026, 2027, and from my experience on the library side of things, I know that the library building was one that was on the library's assessment of assets was called out for a 10-year replacement, and we're probably well into that at this stage of the game. So is the Monterey or the library replacement contemplated here? What was the analysis of that? And does that relate probably in some way to the municipal hall analysis that is called out here on a 10-year timeframe?
Mr. Chance or Mr. Soulier?
Yes, thank you. So absolutely correct on all fronts, through your worship to Councillor Appleton, that those two buildings, the replacement of has not been included. We have the initial signal from the GVPL that the building is anticipated or is based on their usage stats will require a replacement. We would like to gang that analysis and planning work together, given that the Monterey building is in question, and so that work just has not been completed to time that or scope that. It will be part of our next steps in asset management planning. It's just been identified here for council that it's not been included yet.
Anything else?
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. And I think we got to this a little bit earlier, and certainly we made quick reference here to the DCCs and ACCs. So then, just for clarity, then I understand that the DCC and ACC expenditures that are laid out in this forecast essentially are, as was previously referenced, in terms of projections based on current levels of growth, like they're essentially status quo or projections based on current state, essentially.
Go ahead, Mr. Chance.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Your Worship, absolutely the best information we have available, not yet knowing the actual progress or volumes of development. For these future years, we have basically taken our forecasts from our development cost charge program and included those. So as if growth were to happen based on our growth rates, these would be the revenues available, and these would be the related projects that would have allowable, eligible DCC funding.
Thank you. Going to then Councillor Green and Watson. Councillor Green.
Thank you very much. Through you to everyone, thank you very much for a very comprehensive report and very good information. And I just have two questions. One is on the last page, page 6 of the report, it says staff will continue to work on the CPP number 25 and number 38, including a renewal of the communications plan. And I guess my concern is this is really, all of this is critical information. It's important information. It's highly technical in some respects, and there's a lot of language around it that is not easily understood by, the average person on the street. However, as Councillor Patterson mentioned, people are anxious about the future of the community underground, on sidewalks, on transportation, and so on. Is there a way of packaging this material that is understandable and translatable to the public, and as part of a larger communication strategy? I would suggest, rather than a plan, maybe a strategy should be identified, because, as I say, we're way beyond sidewalks, streetlights, and sewers. We're a long way from Kansas now. And so I think the public needs to know this information. I think it would be very beneficial for them, but it needs to be digestible. So that was my question around developing a communication strategy. And then on page 4 of the report, there were 3 important paragraphs at the top of that page, but the most important one for me at the moment was the regarding the strain on infrastructure from housing targets, so CP amendments and senior government funding levels. That is an unknown, and it's a big concern, I think, for the community generally, certainly for us in terms of finances and cost and so on, because unfortunately with the housing legislation, there wasn't money with it, and I don't know if there's any plan to be coming forward. I doubt it somehow. So funding is a big issue for small communities like Hope Bay around this type of infrastructure. So I just wondered if we had a plan around that information and trying to work with that information as we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. I'll hand that over to Ms. LaChance, and you can
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, thank you for the question. So just a quick note on the earlier question around the communication plan and bringing strategic elements into that. Absolutely, you've read my mind. I think that there's a way that we can, because we are taking action, there's an importance that's communicated within the community in a consumable format. So I'll take those notes. And then to your follow-up, I'm hoping you can just rephrase it one more time or repeat it for me, just so that I can make sure I get it right.
boils down to just the need or the desire to have extra funding from higher levels of government.
Yeah.
And probably the question attached to this report is do these numbers include any anticipated grants, or is this essentially the total funding and the projections are our own internal?
Also, making sure the data that we're getting from higher levels of government is correct. That was the other thing in terms of projections and so on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. LaChance?
Thank you both, and through your worship. So the initial stance on this long-term planning and assumptions therein are to only include known grants. That allows us to see long-term what kind of funding shortfall that we have and what does that advocacy look like and what kind of magnitude of grants or otherwise are we going to require. It also allows us to see long-term which projects are ideal for different funding programs very readily. And it also allows us to see where borrowing may be a preferred option rather than taking the risk with waiting for grants. And so there will be very much that view in Lens now. We have a grants function within the district that's actively pursuing, finding out information, relaying that to all of the departments and helping us navigate ability to apply for grants. Part of that is always having projects in the planning stage and getting ready, and that's where the reserves and the 2% levy transfers provide that opportunity for council to better leverage grants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Watson, then Braithwaite, and then we'll take, I have a couple of questions. We'll go any comments from the public and then back to this table if there's any additional direction or comment. Please go ahead, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. I'd just like to follow up on Councillor Green's question about communications plan. I did have a note about that. I was going to ask the same thing, and I just wanted to follow up to say that, yes, clear, simple, definitely a need for that, but I also just wanted to flag that there needs to be definitely touched in that the need or the efficacy of using debt in dealing with the deficit and the aspirations, because that has not been something that's been discussed much in this community at all. And I think we need to be out there with a very consistent and clear message about really what's on the table and what needs to be done and how that needs to be addressed. So I would say that the public is a little bit, well, they're way behind us, even probably in understanding the nature of the beast right now. So, but definitely clear and simple. It's yeah, you need real good communications experts to figure that one out. Anyway, enough on that. I just had one question. It's probably for staff, but and it's about Ms. LaChance talked about, really, this is kind of one big rolling thing. There's a 5-year thing, there's the 30-year thing, there's the 50-year thing. And each sort of stage of planning rolls into the next until what was midterm becomes the current plan. But I wanted to know, there's one slide in the Urban Systems presentation on urgency and readiness, prioritizing projects within each asset class, and we've got a category: highest priority, high priority, emerging, and deferral. I wanted to understand a little bit, if something is in a high priority or emerging priority, given that they're still subject to change, at what point do you actually start doing the real planning about getting those things project ready? And how do you stay nimble and adjust and know that you're really putting your energies into the right places? Because I can see this stuff probably keeps Mr. Rennick up at night, thinking about in 5 years we have to have DAW. Some projects are more complex than others. Some are fairly straightforward now. But how you actually strike that balance between your current efforts and what you need to be able to pull out of the cupboard or put in front of the grant funder or the bank or what, or the, the finance agency 5 years from now or even 10 years from now. So just a little response or commentary on that would be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
If it's okay, I'm going to make the recommendation to have Urban comment on that while they're here.
Yeah, Mr. Lee?
Engineer, go.
Through your worship, Councillor Watson, that is an excellent question. Director Reddick, maybe if you're comfortable, I'll start, and if you want to add to it, that'd be great. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just a quick story from another community who had way too many highest priority projects listed, and it was quite daunting to them. They started the hard work of getting out into the field, getting the cameras into the pipes, digging test pits, really getting into the infrastructure that they had a feeling was ready to be repaired, to be restored, to be replaced. Well, after about 14 or 15 different sites, they realized that only one of those 15, this is a bit of a good news story, and I wish they were all good news stories, they aren't always this good. And they came back and they had 14 of 15 sites that actually did not require that same level of urgency. And they actually looked quite solemn. They felt like they had failed. They had identified projects that needed a lot of attention, but when they got to them, it turned out they had a little bit more time, 10, 15 years. They really came away from that exercise in their communication realizing that it's still very important to use all the risk information that you have, the best that you can have, and still say, these are the areas where we need to focus our attention. But as you learn more, each step and each gate that you go through, if it turns out that those projects aren't the ones that need to happen right now, that's not a failure. That's a win. That's when you're realizing you're actually making really great decisions as you move through gate after gate after gate to make it happen. So I think as Director Rennick might think about those sleepless nights and turn those probably into action at 4 and 5 in the morning like all of us do with lots of responsibilities, it's really to mobilize to go out and get the information that makes things crystal clear. And at that point, you start to recategorize as to where they sit. And you'll find, especially when it's aging assets in communities that are looking to not only catch up for now, but also prepare for 5 and 10 years down the road, that if one gets knocked and delayed because of good information, there's always 5 or 10 more waiting there to be dropped into the bucket. So you're going to have a lot of highest priority. The names and the locations might shift a little bit, but it's really key to get the information.
Mr. Rennick?
Yes, thank you very much, and absolutely an excellent answer from my colleague. I just wanted to, Councillor Patterson had referenced earlier the state of the infrastructure reports that my predecessor, Ed Robertson, delivered, and if there was a theme to those reports, it was that the cavalry, in terms of major capital replacements, is not coming tomorrow. And it was reminding council that there are proactive maintenance activities that we can undertake in terms of the investigatory work that Mr. Lee was referring to, in terms of flushing, cutting, camera work. And so we do continue to do that work, and we really appreciate council's investment in allowing us to continue to do that work, because that's exactly how we take those 15 highest priorities and figure out, well, actually 2 of them are highest and the other ones are just high. So yeah, fantastic answer, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to tack onto it a little bit.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, just before you speak, Councillor Braithwaite, for those in the room, we had a committee of the whole scheduled for 6 o'clock. We're probably going to go a few minutes longer, then we'll start the council meeting. So just so you understand where we're at. If you're looking for what we're talking about on the agenda, that's why it's not there. Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And thanks for the report. I think it really represents a shift from the reactive capital planning to a more structured, risk-based, long-term approach. And it gives us as council more of a visibility on where our funding gaps are and when key decisions are going to be required. So thank you for that. One of my questions, I think, may have been asked by Councillor Green, and it was really along the lines of how resilient is the forecast to changes in grant availability or growth assumptions?
I'm going to give that to Ms. LaChance.
Yes, thank you. Through your worship, I believe Councillor Braithwaite's asking about the sensitivity of the model. And I think in part, the capital spend model, I sort of live in my realm around financial sensitivity. And when I think of those long-term forecasts and what the takeaways are for council, and where I would be looking for sensitivity is where the interest rates are going to impact those future forecasts of balances, and then also conversely where we would be looking at the costing within the capital projects. Right now, at this planning stage, when we do 20-year plans of this nature, we're somewhere in the realm of Class D estimates, and those can vary, sometimes very greatly by the time we get to Class B. It doesn't necessarily always happen, but it can happen. And so I would say that the model before you is fairly sensitive. It's been built to take a point in time snapshot, have that closer look at that 20-year view in more granularity. But we would always be watching from a financial lens around sensitivity as we're bringing forward the financial plan and its effects on the long-term plans.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. My last question, Mayor, would be, how do you think that the enterprise asset management software will materially improve our future forecasts that we're going to have? Thank you.
Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you through your worship, and thank you very much for the question. That is something that we haven't yet talked very much about at this table with myself here. The asset management software is a process whereby we systemize the work that we're doing manually in some cases today. Also, we would be looking to standardize the way that we look at assets, the way we talk about assets, to my colleagues' earlier comments, and we'd be able to access that data more readily across departments. Additionally, you're able to pre-program your work in some cases when you've introduced and have occurrences of those assets in our asset management plans in place. So my response to Councillor Braithwaite would be that it would improve back to our future state of asset management maturity and will be an added step to planning improvements that we're making today.
Thank you for that. I'm going to limit my questions because certainly we can always ask questions offline. I think this is more just for clarity for public information. If I look at the funding report, our current annual funding versus the sustainable annual funding that talks about the required increases to continue, is that by reading of that slide that the current annual funding is in the low 40s and the necessary sustainable annual funding is in the high 50s? Is that what I'm reading there?
If I may, Your Worship, can you reference the slide that you're looking at?
It is on page 13 of 50 in the overall piece, or I don't think there's in the slide deck. Yeah, it's just the overall page 13.
Thank you. That's
50.
within the urban report,
Correct.
so I will get my colleague to jump in.
It's the slide that shows the coming due and past due and the current annual funding and the sustainable annual funding with a $460 million band going across it. I think Mr. Rennick has it.
Thank you. So sorry. Mayor, would you be so
no.
kind as to repeat the question?
No, I'm reading that graph, and I think it's a great graph, but as I'm reading it, it looks like our current annual funding is around $40 million a year, and we're looking at getting closer to $60 million to hit the sustainable annual funding mark. That's what that 2% per year to get to. Is that the right bandwidth that I'm looking at?
Yes, that's correct. And the 2% was, again, a point in time through the SIRP that hasn't been reanalyzed through this process. We were looking at major capital projects. That is something that through analyzing as ERPs are introduced and through updating asset management plans, the full life cycle of these assets over 50-year time horizon could be updated and looked at. But that $60 million is indeed the sustainable annual funding target that the 2% refers to.
Great, thank you. And the only other question I think I'll ask here is just, in looking at the cost of this, I think, is there any mechanism by which, I guess one of the big things we get in the community is the cost, of course, of failed infrastructure on them. So there's a cumulative cost if there's flooding that people have to pay for the flooding repairs and these things. So when we're doing the analysis of the cost impact of these things, is there a mechanism by which we can also sort of look at the broader community costs, either of lost services or of damage to households or businesses or any other mechanisms there? Because I think that might change the prioritization models in some cases where it might not be a high cost to us, but it might be a higher cost to the community. And so That's sort of my question is there any mechanism we can build that sensitivity into the modeling? Ms. LaChance?
Yes, thank you to your worship. Absolutely, in developing an asset management plan for any said system, you are looking at those costs of service delivery on the community. And you're setting those levels of service around, whether that be, no loss to the community or whether there'd be some, with climate being sometimes ad hoc, you don't know when there'll be heavy rainfall, maybe there's some impact. So I think that as we advance those asset management plans, which is our next step, absolutely that lens will be applied. And I think that that's already occurring, and that's where I'll, if it's okay with you, just pass over to my colleague, Director Rennick, to add to that response.
Sure, Mr. Rennick?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yes, adding on to that response, one of the guiding principles that was outlined in the presentation in the underground utilities is consequence of failure and risk and reliability. That has always been something that's factored into the decision-making process that we make, sort of. When you don't have other data, you can always rely on, well, project A potentially affects more people if it fails than project B, so all things being equal, we would prioritize project A. So that's absolutely always part of our decision-making process.
Thank you. And my only other question is just in that estimated projects, there's a bit of a, not quite status quo, but a slow growth for the next sort of 5 years, and then a significant increase in the capital planning. Can you just talk to very briefly about what is the constraint that's holding us for these next few years? Is it just staff capacity? Is it data that we're still waiting for? Is it just a lag time between the planning? Detailed. I'm just curious where that is, and is there anything that, from a council direction that would help, I guess, sort of get past that time delay? Through me to you, I guess, Ms. Chance.
Yes, thank you, and to you, your worship. Yes, absolutely. You're quite right to recognize that there is a bulge in the capital spend in the, not within the 5-year frame, but really an onset in that 10 to 15 year. And that's that signal of investment period that we've talked about in the financial plan process. Absolutely, that's being driven by the renewal or replacement of significant facilities that are all coming due within a 20-year period. And so we're looking at those from the 10 to 15 year from a planning perspective and priority setting as urgent or emerging. And also within that is the drainage. So while council has directed staff take action, advance renewal and replacement to a greater degree, the deferral work program has come online and is ultimately saying, a lot of these assets need to be replaced at the same time. And so really from a master plan perspective, and that's where I might invite my other colleagues, the master plan is signaling, for example, with drainage, that a lot of assets have to be replaced within that 5-year window that's in that tenure that you've recognized. And so we have identified in the report that we need to pay more attention to that because we're regularly integrating drainage work and in the rising capital plan that's being executed right now. But we need to do work to better understand how to phase that work.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's sufficient. And I certainly recognize that. Of course, there's certainly so much you can do in any given year in terms of disruption. So there's an advantage to advancing some things, but some limits. Thank you for that. So we are a committee of the whole, but before we wrap this up, we're not giving direction here today, but this is an open opportunity for any member of the public, either online or in person. If you wish to speak to us on this item before we close this meeting down, we are talking about a comprehensive asset management plan. So if anybody wishes to speak to us that's here tonight or online, this is your opportunity to talk to council. I think everybody's here for the later meeting, for the council meeting, so I'm just going to check. I don't see hands online, so being raised on this item. So back to this table. You're not asking for direction here. We've certainly, I think, heard questions from council. Any final comments before I we'll take a motion to receive the report, and that'll be our...
So moved, your worship.
Moved and seconded. So we can speak to the motion, or really, just in this case, any final comments before we conclude this item on the agenda. I'll just speak on behalf of council then that really appreciate this. This has been very central to I would say, deemed success. It's probably the least visible, most important project that we have, and I really appreciate the consultants in Urban Systems and our staff in continuing to advance this work. Super critically important, and yeah, full support as you go forward. So thank you for all that you're doing. Before I'll call the question then on receipt. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? Thank you very much. With that, we're looking to adjourn the Committee of the Whole.
To adjourn?
Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? We're just going to take about, I think it takes about 4 or 5 minutes, 6 minutes. 6 minutes to cut over the live stream. So if anybody wishes to stand up, stretch your legs, please don't be more than 6 minutes, and we will bring this meeting back to order at 7:15.
If I stay on the same Zoom link, or don't I?
You do. Please